Shooting's been a hobby for me for at least the past 33 years. It helps you think in a way that is tactical and practical as well. Personal security, of course, has always been a concern. Especially as a prosecutor.
All rise.
My name is Ron Dersh. I'm a deputy prosecuting attorney for Snohomish County.
I'm trying the Jerry Jones case now for the third time. The case has spanned approximately 17 years of my career.
This is a shocking scene, I think, even to the veteran police officers who responded.
I'm Joe Ward. I'm a homicide detective for the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office, and I was here 17 years ago to investigate the murder of Lee Jones. Mrs. Jones had received a lot of injuries to her body. She had over 60 wounds, slashes, stabs.
She's in the bathtub while she is being killed, and she is vocal. She is yelling, she is screaming, she is battling her assailant.
It looked like she had fought for her life in that room and lost. Jerry Jones says he heard a noise and responded and found his wife stabbed. And as he found her, someone brushed by him and pushed him against the wall and cut his hand. Jerry's story is unbelievable.
Detective Ward begins to realize that it just doesn't add up, and that he has the murder suspect right in front of him. It was a great relief to get that first guilty verdict in this case. We have the Ninth Circuit deciding that it was a weak circumstantial case and that it should be retried. It's 2001, we did it the second time.
The jury finds the defendant, Jerry Bartlett Jones, guilty of the crime of murder in first degree as charged.
A verdict that was extremely satisfying, one that I hoped meant the end of the case. The Court of Appeals of the state of Washington reverses us. Again, I'm quite angry and embittered by what the Court of Appeals has done. As a prosecutor, there are certain cases that resound in your consciousness, that affect you on some emotional level. This was one of them. So I was not looking forward to visiting that place yet again. Came the dawn. Round three.
Opening statement from the defense, Mr. Jones. Thank you, Your Honor.
This trial had a strange twist as the murder defendant acted as his own attorney.
I've decided to represent myself.
He just keeps coming back.
Nobody knows the case better than I do.
It's almost as though he and I were meant to show up in the same courtroom and fight this thing out.
Defending your life.
I loved my mother very much. And if I had any doubt whatsoever that my dad might have done it, I wouldn't be standing by him like this.
For almost 17 years,
My sister and I can come down this evening.
Kim Jones and her younger sister Beth
Our other interview starts at about 6.
have been on a mission,
There's no way that he did this.
trying to prove their father, Jerry Jones Jr.,
No, this is wrong.
is innocent of brutally killing their mother Lee.
Has there ever been a moment where you've said, maybe Dad did do this?
No. You have to know my dad. No. My dad is a very peaceful man.
He never even raised his voice at anyone in the family.
Jerry, how you feeling? I'm feeling great.
48 Hours began following this story in 1999, when Jerry Jones was released from prison for the first time.
This is a dream come true.
After an appeals court ruled his lawyer was ineffective.
My dad deserves freedom just like everybody else.
His release marked the beginning of an incredible legal drama. In 2001, Jerry Jones was retried and reconvicted. And then remarkably, an appeals court reversed that conviction because the jury didn't hear crucial evidence. Now, Jones and his daughters are back for round 3. And this time, Jones will be represented by the man he says knows this case better than anyone, himself.
All rise. Court is again in session.
Do you have any legal training at all?
No, I don't.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury,
If they can get a feel for me as a human being, then they'll be convinced that I am not capable of murdering anyone.
the evidence will tell you that I loved my wife.
He'll be going toe-to-toe with the man who has prosecuted him twice before.
Please listen carefully to the evidence in the case.
Ron Dersch.
We do our best to make sure that murderers don't get away with murder.
The prosecutor will be unable to prove to you that I murdered Lee for one very simple reason. I did not do it.
And to ensure a fair verdict, this jury won't hear about Jerry Jones's earlier trials or convictions.
I'm not perfect, I've made mistakes, but I'm not a murderer.
I'd give anything if I could have her back right now.
It was Lee's beauty that first caught his attention back in 1970.
I encountered the most gorgeous creature I'd ever laid eyes on in my life.
When Jerry was stationed in Vietnam, serving in the Air Force.
She had these beautiful brown eyes and the most gorgeous smile you've ever seen. And for me, it was just love at first sight.
They married in Vietnam, and their first child, Kim, was born there. Within months, Jerry's tour ended, and Lee left her family behind and moved to the U.S. to start a new life.
2 more children are born,
Mm-hmm.
Beth and Thomas.
Yes.
Jerry retired after 20 years in the Air Force, and the family moved to Bothell, Washington, just outside Seattle.
They were just in the prime of their marriage.
Look at those lovebirds. Oh, how sweet.
They were always hugging each other. They were always kissing and they were very close and very happy.
Jerry became a successful pharmaceutical salesman. Lee was a busy housewife, raising 3 children.
Everything in our home was encouraging and positive.
These are the last pictures of Lee, taken at a Thanksgiving celebration. 9 days later, she would be stabbed 63 times in the family bathtub.
When my wife needed me the most, I couldn't do it. I couldn't help her.
On the night of December 3rd, 1988, Jerry and Lee were at home with 4-year-old Thomas. According to Jerry, Lee had put their son to sleep, then went to the hallway bathroom to take a bath. Jazz music was playing from a radio in Jerry's study. He was across the hall in the master bedroom. His shower was running in the adjoining bathroom.
I heard this horrible scream, one loud, piercing scream. I'd never heard anything like that before in my entire life.
Jerry says he raced towards the bathroom door.
This is happening so quickly, so fast. You start perceiving that something is coming out. And as I'm moving closer to the doorway, you see more and more, and it's a knife.
Jerry remembers colliding with an intruder and reaching for the knife.
And in the process, I suffered some cuts. I'm knocked back. I hit my head against the wall. Boom, fall to the floor. And I'm seeing these black and white flashing lights. And when I got up, there was nobody in the hallway any longer. They immediately went into the bathroom. And I encountered the most horrible situation I've ever seen in my life.
911, what do you have? Hurry, my wife, she has been stabbed repeatedly.
I find my wife in the tub, and she is struggling. I said, my God, Lee, what happened? She was trying to speak, I'm convinced of that. I can recall this chattering sound of her teeth.
Can
Can you tell me where she's stabbed?
All over.
Okay, is there a knife in her anywhere? Do not remove the knife.
Her eyes were wide open, and she was looking right at me, and I realized that she was losing her physical life very rapidly.
Will you help me help her?
I'll try. What can I do?
Is she breathing?
I don't think so. Ma'am, I think she's dead.
Amid this blood and chaos, Thomas woke up.
I went upstairs and I found my mother. She was in the bathtub and was bloody.
No father on this earth would want his son to see his mother in that condition.
It was one of the most violent murders I've ever seen. She was viciously attacked, and she fought for her life. These are all scene photographs taken the night of the investigation.
Detective Joe Ward was the lead investigator.
All I could see was that I had a wet and bloody man with a hand wrapped in a towel and a dead wife in the bathroom.
I think they had already made up their mind. Lee is dead. Jerry is at home. Case is closed.
We don't have any witnesses that saw anybody run from the house. We don't have any DNA. There's really an absence of any evidence of an intruder.
Jerry, did you murder your wife, Lee Jones?
No, I didn't, Peter. They didn't do an investigation that night. And within 2 hours, I found myself under arrest for something I didn't do.
Making an arrest that night without talking to anybody else other than my dad was a very big mistake.
I'm the one who knows what happened on that December night better than anyone else.
As daughters Kim and Beth listen to their father's opening statement, they know this third trial may be his last.
There was no reason, no motive.
And his best chance to prove
it was an intruder who did it.
Someone else murdered Lee Jones.
You will hear that a disturbed teenage neighborhood boy committed this awful crime.
I think he's desperate. Too sure the finger is pointed elsewhere.
I lived in the shadow of the L, the J train. It ran about 10 feet from my window. My mom and dad owned a delicatessen there for about 35 years.
This Queens, New York neighborhood is a long way from Everett, Washington. But for prosecutor Ron Dersch, there's a close connection.
I think that Ron saw Lee Jones as someone similar to his mom.
Mara Rosano is Ron's wife and also a prosecutor.
His mom was someone very special in his life.
My mother was an immigrant, and she always spoke heavily accented English. She was about 5'4", and her name was Elizabeth, and everyone called her Leah.
And he's determined to get justice for Lee Jones.
Here's the old case file.
Even after all these years.
This is all Jerry Jones. These are all his.
Well, there's no doubt I'm sick of the case. Not sick enough to let him go.
As prosecutor Ron Dersch begins his case, he's feeling the pressure. He's won hundreds of trials, but now faces the possibility of professional humiliation. What if Jerry Jones, a self-taught lawyer wannabe who Dersch has convicted twice before, wins this case?
That'd be a hard one to swallow, wouldn't it? That'd be tough.
Is Jerry a good attorney?
I think he is. He's done a lot better than I have on occasion. Let's take you back to December 3rd of 1988.
Dersch believes his opposing counsel is, in fact, his best evidence.
The strongest piece of evidence is Jerry Jones. He is still here. He is still alive. Her autopsy will show that.
He tells the jury about Lee's defensive wounds, the blood spatter in the bathroom, and the cuts on Jerry's right hand, that Jerry says were caused by the intruder.
They're consistent with a defensive move on my part to knock the knife out of his hand when I encountered him in the hallway.
Showing you exhibit number 121.
But a forensic expert testifies the cuts more likely occurred when Jerry's hand slid off the knife handle.
Blood on the hand of the assailant can be transferred to the handle of the knife, making it slippery.
As he allegedly stabbed Lee dozens of times. Jerry counters with his own expert.
It's a cut. That's all you can say.
My fingerprints were not on the knife. My blood was not on the knife. And my DNA is not on the knife. How on earth is it possible to stab someone 63 times and yet leave no physical evidence whatsoever?
I think that he rinsed off the handle of that knife. I think he was fully aware that there would be some testing, fingerprint or otherwise.
The jury also hears that Jerry let crucial minutes pass.
3-5 minutes.
911, what do you have? Hurry.
Before calling 911.
Jerry, Lee is in the tub bleeding to death, and you still haven't called 911.
True.
I don't get it.
I don't get it either.
But Ron believes he knows why. In the midst of everything, 4-year-old Thomas comes upstairs.
And not just once, but several times, as far as we're able to tell. And at this point, Jerry's hands are already full. He's got a dying woman, he's got cuts on his hands, and here comes his kid.
Jerry takes Thomas back to his bedroom.
If you didn't kill Lee, why in the world would you have taken your young son back downstairs and left him there when you don't know whether or not the killer is still in the house?
Well, Peter, you're presuming, of course, that I'm thinking clearly, coherently, and logically at this point in time.
There is no intruder in the home, and there never was. The killer is Jerry Jones. He knows Thomas is safe downstairs.
Thomas comes upstairs again. This time, Jerry takes his son to Graham Smith, his next-door neighbor.
As I opened the door, Jerry was there on the porch.
The judge has asked us to not show the faces of some witnesses.
Jerry said that he was watching TV, he was hit over the head, and when he came to, he found Lee bleeding and stabbed.
You tell your neighbor that you were struck on the head while watching TV. You tell the police that you collided with the intruder. Two separate stories.
I didn't tell two different stories. My response to him was, I hit my head, and when I got up, I found Lee bleeding all over.
It is only after he returns home that Jerry finally calls 911.
Yes, my wife.
What's the address?
160.
But he gives them the wrong address.
You're going to have to help me because we have a conflict with your address.
Lead investigator Joe Ward believes Jerry's mistake was intentional.
I think that's just another part of his plan to delay the response to the house just to make sure that his wife was dead.
It took the police 10 minutes to find the house, and when they went inside, they discovered Jerry wet and bloody. A forensic scientist testifies to scenarios of how the crotch area of Jerry's jeans became stained with Lee's blood.
One potential would be if the rail of a bathtub in this crime scene had been saturated with blood and an individual sat on that rail. The other object that I know is long and narrow and bloody is the limbs, the arms and legs of Lee Jones.
I think at some point he is sitting on her to hold her down.
Sitting on her while he's stabbing her?
Yes.
Not true, says Jerry Jones.
I loved her. I did not murder my wife. I could not do it. There was no reason for me to do it.
In fact, Jerry says if he wanted Lee dead, he had his chance right here in their bedroom. It was during a rough period in their marriage. When the couple separated, Lee attempted suicide, overdosing on sleeping pills. Jerry found her and rushed her to the emergency room.
Their separation was the best thing that ever happened to them. They really realized how much they appreciated each other.
Look at those lovebirds. Oh, how sweet.
The couple soon reconciled.
In the last year before my mom died, they were very close.
Marriage was perfect, maybe for him.
But Lee's friends, Barbara Sleeper and Mary McNaughton, say right before she was murdered, Lee was looking for a way out.
Jerry and his daughters can say anything they want to. He can talk about how in love he was and that they, were reunited and everything else, but I knew that she wanted to get divorced.
Isn't it possible that Jerry Jones is innocent?
I don't see how it's possible.
But Jerry Jones insists he knows who really killed Lee.
Busby, if you would raise your right hand.
And he's about to put him on trial. You think you'll see Busby today?
Probably.
You looking forward to that?
Not looking forward to that, no.
All rise.
The state calls Daniel Busby.
We're not allowed to show his face.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
But for more than 16 years, Jerry Jones has insisted this man is his wife's real killer.
Danny Busby did it, Peter. There's no doubt in my mind about that.
Did you have a mouth on you back then?
Yeah.
You wise ass?
Yeah.
Prosecutor Ron Dersch says there is no evidence that Danny Busby, then a 15-year-old teenager, was involved.
On December 3rd of 1988, did you murder Lee Jones in her house in Bothell?
No.
There is no connection, basically, between Danny Busby and the crime scene that night. All the DNA evidence tends to exclude Danny Busby.
But Ron knows Danny's tough guy presence will vastly complicate his case.
Chewing gum there?
Yeah.
Can you swallow that?
No.
He's kind of a loose cannon, and I'm concerned about that.
At the time of Lee's murder, Danny was a friend of Beth Jones.
I knew he had a crush on me.
A neighborhood loudmouth.
He was always the one that would initiate something troublesome.
Who liked to tease Thomas.
Growling at him like a lion or tiger and just scaring him.
And antagonize Lee.
He appeared to us to be just an obnoxious teenage boy. We know that he has grown and developed into a very disturbed, vicious, uncaring, brutal person.
Now, for the first time in 3 trials, Jerry Jones is allowed to tell the jury about Danny Busby's troubled past. A history of violence that Jerry says began the night that Lee died. He'll directly confront Busby about his assaults against ex-girlfriends and threats to kill people. It's evidence that Jerry Jones hopes will convince the jury that Danny Busby is capable of murder.
Mr. Jones, do you have any questions of Mr. Busby?
I do. I think we're going to be allowed to paint him as the monster that he is.
Would you describe yourself as prone to violence?
I have been in the past.
Was it common for you to become so angry that you would lose control and black out?
Slightly.
What's it like for you to look into Danny Busby's eyes?
I see a disturbed person, a violent person, a person almost without a soul.
And would you describe yourself as having an uncontrollable temper?
At times, yeah.
Jerry says it was that uncontrollable temper that exploded after Lee banned Danny from visiting and calling Beth.
But you continued calling Beth, did you not?
Probably.
You continued to come to the house asking for Beth, didn't you?
It's quite possible.
Jerry claims that an enraged Danny was looking for Beth the night of the murder, but found Lee instead.
And he viciously stabbed and slashed and attacked her over and over and over again that night.
The problem with your allegation is that there's no physical evidence that Busby was at your home. There's no witness that places him there.
I think there is. I think Thomas was awakened by a growling sound. Do you recall ever growling at Thomas like a lion or a tiger to frighten him?
I don't recall.
Are you saying that never happened?
No.
Saying I don't recall.
Danny Busby growled at Thomas prior to going upstairs and murdering Lee, and he is the only person who ever growled at Thomas.
Ron Dersch believes if there were any growling sounds that night, they came from Jerry himself.
Is there growling going on? Is Jerry Jones grunting or growling while he's stabbing Lee? This is hard work. You take a look at those autopsy photos. This is hard work. This is not easy stuff to do.
Then there's Busby's long history of violence against his girlfriends.
Did you begin physically abusing Crystal?
Yeah.
Did you punch Vondra on the shoulder numerous times?
Yeah.
Did you throw Joey to the ground?
No, I pushed her.
Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
Things get even worse for the prosecution as those former girlfriends take the stand.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
We can't show their faces.
He was both verbally and physically mean.
He could be kind and fun 1 minute and then freak out.
He would just kind of snap and change personalities. He'd be so furious.
They're very sympathetic people. There's just no question that he has put them through hell.
He gave me a black eye.
He started kicking the crap out of me.
Pretty much attacked me and spit in my face.
But Ron Dersch says Jerry is using Danny Busby as a convenient scapegoat.
Remember that when we look at what Danny Busby has done as an adult, he has not attempted to murder anyone. On any occasion did he, in your opinion, seriously try to kill you?
No.
He has not physically stabbed or assaulted anyone in the way that we have in this case. Danny never threatened you with a knife or any kind of weapon, did he?
No.
And the challenge is going to be to draw that line between Danny Busby as a 15-year-old and Danny Busby as an adult.
Did he once tell your mother that she was dead?
Yes.
And has he also threatened to rape your mother?
Yes.
If the jurors decide that Danny Busby is volatile enough to have done this, then the case is lost.
All rise.
The defense may call the next witness. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
All of them wanted to be there.
I do.
All of them wanted to testify.
Yes, I do.
All of them wanted to tell their stories.
And all of them want to help free their father. To do that, Jerry is counting on their testimony to put then 15-year-old Danny Busby at the crime scene in December 1988.
Were you ever present when Danny Busby would growl at Thomas like a lion or a tiger?
Yes, he did that very frequently.
Did he ever growl at you?
I think so, yes.
What, asked Jones, did Thomas hear on the night his mother was murdered 16 years ago, when he was just 4 years old?
I remember it being more animal-like than that.
He said he woke up when he heard growling noises and that a lion or a tiger got Mom.
He was repeating a lion or tiger had gotten Mom.
While I'm watching them testify, I'm thinking, you know, this is amazing. These people are flawless. They are polished. They are rehearsed. And you think to yourself, damn it, wise up.
While Beth, Kim, and Thomas lovingly stand by their father, Jerry Jones knows that it is his testimony, and not his children's, that jurors really want to hear. So as his own attorney, he decides to take the stand and come face to face with Ron Dersch, a confrontation 16 years in the making.
Once I knew that the case was coming back, it was clear to me that there would be some sort of face-off.
I don't look at it as a match between Ron Dersch and myself.
The defense would call Jerry Jones, Your Honor.
I look at it as an opportunity to present the evidence to a jury of 12 people.
I solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth,
and prove my innocence.
But before Ron faces Jerry...
Jerry, did you kill your wife?
I did not kill my wife.
A public defender assigned by the court to advise him asked Jones to explain his bizarre behavior after he discovered Lee had been stabbed.
Did you at any point that evening go and get wet.
Yes.
How did you do that?
I ran into the master bedroom and heard the water running in the shower. And I went to turn it off, and I felt a sting on my hand. And I looked and saw that it was bleeding, and I just ran back out.
That's not the story Jerry told at his first trial.
Mr. Dersh, cross-examination.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Ron believes he's caught Jerry in a lie. He whips out the transcripts and reads Jerry's own words back to him.
I open the shower door, and instead of reaching in and turning the shower off, I step inside. Clothes and all, I let the water run from the top of my head down the front of my body. You recall testifying to that effect in 1989.
If that's what it says, that's obviously what I testified to.
I have no further questions.
After just a handful of questions, Dersh retreats.
I was amazed at how few questions Ron Dersh asked me. I believe he was fairly convinced that he had lost the trial.
I expected you to take off the gloves, that this was going to be a bare-knuckle confrontation with Jerry, and it seems like you played a little patty cake. Was that a strategy? Did you choke?
I couldn't get mad at him at that point. Just because I have a stick to hit him with doesn't mean I'm going to hit him with it.
But Ron uses that stick in his closing statement.
Exhibit 1 for the state is Jerry Jones, because he is still here. He is still alive. Danny Busby is as subtle as a brick through a plate glass window. Do you think, having listened to Danny Busby on the stand, having seen his behavior here, he could keep his mouth shut? Danny Busby is offered up as the boogeyman. And he was not. He did not kill Lee Jones. We know who did. And it's Jerry Jones.
For Jerry and his family, their long battle to win his freedom comes down to one final argument.
The prosecutor has failed to prove that I murdered my wife, Lee Jones, for one reason. I did not do it. As you know, I'm on trial here. You're going to go into that room soon and deliberate, and you're going to vote either guilty or not guilty. Jerry Jones's name is on that ballot. Danny Busby's name is not there. It's outrageous. It doesn't add up. I had no motive. I was not a violent person. I was not an explosive person. I'm the person you see standing before you today.
I think what the jury got to see was Jerry Jones acting in closing.
The crying?
Yeah.
Rehearsed?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Genuine?
No.
For the third time, Jerry Jones' fate is in the hands of a jury. In a scant 4.5 hours, the jury reaches a verdict.
All rise. Court is again in session.
After a grueling 3-week trial,
All parties are here. We have a verdict. Please bring in the jury.
Jurors reach a verdict in just 4.5 hours.
I'm thinking they came back too soon. They're going to walk it.
Mr. Jones, if you please stand for the reading of the verdict.
Oh, I'm expecting a not guilty verdict.
We all took it very seriously.
Just the weight of it, it was almost overcoming.
Jurors remember a tense courtroom as they filed in with their verdict.
I looked at Jerry Jones and I looked at Ron Dersh. I think both of those guys have had a very personal role in this thing for the last 16 years.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Jerry Bartlett Jones, Jr., guilty of the crime of murder in the first degree as charged.
When you hear the word for the third time, guilty, what was that moment like for you?
You just shake your head in disbelief and what on earth are they thinking?
When I hear the word guilty, I'm thinking, this is over for now. This is over.
For prosecutor Ron Dersch, winning a third conviction is a tremendous relief.
Was justice served here today, Ron?
Absolutely. It was served in 2000. It was served in 1989. It's the right verdict.
All rise.
Yeah. 36 jurors from 3 trials have now heard the evidence in this case, and not one believes that you are innocent.
Yeah, that's very disappointing. I don't have an explanation for it.
You think you should have done anything differently?
I think I did everything humanly possible. I can't imagine anything more I could have done. Tell me what the evidence is that convinces you that I murdered my wife.
We went through everything and it just didn't fit. A lot of us looked through every single piece of evidence, including the clothes, the knife, every single picture, making sure there wasn't something that we were missing.
That's why we took 4.5 hours, or else we could have came out of that jury room in 45 minutes.
Jurors didn't buy Jerry's version of events.
He had a lot of inconsistencies with his stories.
Or his explanation for the cuts on his hand.
It looked like there was at least 2 contacts with the knife that we could tell, which didn't match up with him telling us that he had a run-in with an assailant and knocked that knife out of his hand.
They also didn't believe Jerry's story of only hearing a single scream, as his wife was being stabbed 63 times in the next room.
I've lived in a split-level house myself. I could be downstairs and hear stuff going on upstairs in the bathroom. I think there was a terrible struggle, and I think you would have heard that all over that house.
Can you tell me where she's stabbed?
All over.
And after listening to the 911 tape several times,
On the whole 911 tape, he never cried.
No, never.
I thought that was odd.
And then he would put down the phone and run and go do this.
Sir? Sir?
And put down the phone and run and go do that.
Hello?
When you're on the phone with 911, you stay on the phone.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth?
And what about Danny Busby, the person Jerry Jones claims is the real killer?
There was no evidence that Danny Busby was in that house that night. There was no DNA evidence. There was no blood evidence.
Right.
There was nothing that put Danny Busby in that house except Jerry Jones wanting him to be in that house, and he wasn't.
Jurors found Danny Busby unlikable.
Busby is a really nasty human being.
But believable.
He was being very honest about the fact he had hit the woman, he had pushed their head into the steering wheel. He had admitted to everything, but when it came down to did you kill Lee Jones? No, I did not kill Lee Jones.
It was Jerry Jones they didn't believe.
Every move, every emotion he made seemed planned out.
I'm sure he's loving with his children and his grandchildren, but I think his wife was a whole nother matter.
He looks nice on the outside and he speaks with a soft tone, but he gives me the creeps.
He could not hide himself from the jury.
I did not murder my wife.
They saw through to him, to his essential core.
All rise.
5 days after being convicted,
State versus Jerry Bartlett Jones.
Jerry Jones is back in court for sentencing.
He is present, he is in custody.
And for the 3rd time,
We stand up for him because we believe in his innocence, absolutely.
his daughters ask for compassion.
Everyone talks about how much we love our dad, but they seem to forget how much we loved our mother.
You can send him to prison, but prison isn't going to make us suffer any more than we already have in these last 16 years.
But for Pam O'Keefe, Danny Busby's mother, Jerry Jones doesn't deserve any sympathy.
The evil started the night Jerry Jones murdered his wife, and the next day when he accused my son of doing it.
No one knows how years of being vilified affected Danny Busby's life. But his mother believes Jerry Jones needs to be punished for all the lives he's damaged.
I hope a day doesn't go by for the rest of your life that you don't think of your wife. And how you took her life away from your children and then you accused a 15-year-old innocent boy. You have ruined so many lives.
When it's Jerry's turn, he seems remorseful.
Wish Danny Busby's name had not come to mind. I have no reason to bring his name into these proceedings.
Stop damaging Danny Busby.
Jerry is chastised one last time
And let him heal and grow the best he can.
before Judge James Allendorfer sentences him.
I'm going to sentence you for the third time in your life to 25 years in the penitentiary.
Got anything in your pockets at all?
But just a few months later, back in prison, Jerry Jones is defiant once again.
Do you owe Danny Busby an apology?
No, I do not owe Danny Busby an apology, and none will be forthcoming.
I think it's entirely likely that at this point he's managed to convince himself that he did not commit this murder.
For Ron Dersch, the battle against Jerry Jones is finally over. He's moving on, but not to another case.
I, Ronald Dersch, swear that I will support, defend, and obey.
Instead of prosecuting, he'll be enforcing the law.
You sure you want to do this?
Yes, sir.
Welcome aboard.
As a deputy sheriff. But the case that has consumed his life for so many years will be much more difficult to leave behind.
I don't know that anything we can do in a courtroom can really put the dead to rest. Clearly, the family has been damaged, I think, beyond repair by what Jerry Jones did. So in terms of whether Lee Jones can rest, well, I hope she can rest. The rest of us, I don't think can.
Before we begin, just a trigger warning. The following episode contains references to graphic physical violence. Please listen with care.
Jerry, did you take a fillet knife and inflict 63 stab wounds on your wife, Lee, and kill her?
I did not.
And you swear on everything you believe to be holy that that's true?
Everything I can imagine to be holy, I would swear to that effect. Yes.
That is the sound of Jerry Jones being interviewed by 48 Hours correspondent Peter Van Sant about the 1988 murder of his 41-year-old wife, Lee. My name is Judy Rybak. I'm a longtime 48 Hours producer, and this is Killer Conversation, a podcast about what we at 48 Hours have learned about the criminal mind after years of interviewing convicted killers. In this episode, Peter Van Sant will take us behind the scenes of two conversations he had with Jones, one of the killers who still haunts him to this day. We'll hear never-before-heard, revealing exchanges between a highly skilled interviewer and a man convicted of killing the mother of his 3 children. Peter, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you taking the time.
It's great, Judy, to be working with you again. We've done this many times, so it's a pleasure.
So, Peter, about how many killers do you think you've interviewed for 48 Hours?
Kind of a strange question, isn't it? I mean, I don't get asked that very often, but, I did some digging, and because over the decades, actually, and it's over 20 killers. They've strangled, shot, stabbed, blown a husband up in a car bomb, cut throats, tortured, beaten, poisoned, dismembered, burned and buried their victims. They're all scary people. But the man we're going to talk about today, Jerry Jones, he's from my home state of Washington. In fact, this murder case was just about 8 miles from where I grew up. And he still has me looking both ways when I leave the office. When I leave the broadcast center where we are recording this, I always check to my left and right because it's the way he murdered his wife, Lee, that really haunts me to this day.
That is incredible, Peter. You told me that over dinner one night while we were on the road, and I was just blown away. And that's because Jerry Jones is a free man today. He was paroled from prison in 2008 after serving only 16 years of a 25-year sentence.
That's not unusual in my home state of Washington. The system there, they've always taken a European view of incarceration, and they see it as a time of rehabilitation, that people can change. And Jerry, after 16 years in prison, he got that second chance, and he's now living peaceably, as far as I know, in rural Washington state and Western Washington.
As someone who believes in second chances, I have mixed feelings about that, but I really want people to understand the brutality of this crime.
The lead investigator who I interviewed, who had been in many, many homicide situations, had never seen anything like this. Keep in mind, a typical murder on a 48-hour show, somebody shoots someone, or if they're going to use something like a knife, they get a butcher knife, they go for the heart, they go for the jugular for a quick kill, right? It was just the opposite in the way that Lee Jones died. She wasn't stabbed as much as, this is difficult to listen to, as she was sliced. This was a fillet knife that had a curved end to it. It's a kind of knife that you might have to cut your steak, right? It was not a butcher knife. And she was cut at least 63 times. And the forensic expert said that there may have been 40 different attempts to cut her, and that this movement of the blade, if he was going left to right or right to left, would sometimes give her 2 or 3 wounds. So that at least 40 different thrusts at her with this knife, but they were not designed to kill her right away. She suffered minute after minute after minute. This woman bled out. That's how she died.
So when you first met Jones, he had been convicted. He had served 10 years. The conviction was overturned, and he had been out for 2 years. He was about to go to trial a second time. What was that like, interviewing a man who you knew had been convicted and was most likely lying to you?
Well, what was fascinating about Jerry's case is that it became a bit of a media sensation. When he got out, he has 2 daughters, beautiful, intelligent, articulate, and they had been campaigning on television, not only in the state of Washington, but on a talk show called Lisa, where the 3 of them were on the show and saying, our father is innocent, we're convinced of it. And they were so convincing that I thought to myself, could they be right? Right? Could they be right? And keep in mind, as a journalist, you don't begin an interview with a suspected killer and say, Jerry, look, I know you did it. The evidence is irrefutable. You murdered your wife. You tried to manipulate people. You are a killer. You don't do that.
Right.
You want to get into their mind. You want to, this is a journey you're going to take with them. And so the initial parts of these interviews are always friendly. I want to hear their story, and I do, because I want to see, can he convince me? And so we met over and over again to talk about his relationship, how they met, their life together, their ups and downs, the evidence. And he was open to any question that I wanted to ask. And that's what a journalist dreams of.
How did you first meet Lee?
Peter, as I recall it, I was stationed in Vietnam at Ben Thuy Air Base, which was down in the Mekong Delta. And I had been there for several months, it seems, and I'm almost convinced it was on New Year's Day of 1970 that I encountered the most gorgeous creature I'd ever laid eyes on in my life. And for me, it was just love at first sight.
When you speak of Lee, I mean, your eyes really brighten. You have a smile on your face.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like a Disney movie, but it's more like a Hitchcock film, right?
Like a Hallmark film. Yeah,
Right.
But again, for our audience listening to this, that gentle manner he has, now he sounds like a romantic. And he's in Vietnam. He was serving our country. And when you see a picture of them back in the day, she's beautiful. He's a very handsome man, an authoritative figure to her. and probably seemed like a match made in heaven for the two of them.
Jerry sounds like a lighthearted teenager in love when he talks about Lee. Do you think that was real or smoke and mirrors?
A communications professor of mine in college once told me, he said, Peter, words don't have meaning, people have meaning.
Just the thought of her still warms your heart.
Absolutely. She's still very much a part of my life. I don't think there's a day that goes by that I don't think about her and think about her warmly and affectionately. And, I still wish that she was here to be a part of my life and me to be a part of hers and to enjoy our grandchildren and look at our children and how they've grown and developed into such fine young people. So it's been a big loss for us all.
You miss her?
Absolutely. I'd give anything if I could have her back right now.
My goodness. So he thinks about her warmly and affectionately. He didn't even say he missed her until you asked him.
He's speaking these words, but sitting across from him, he doesn't seem, in my opinion, to mean them. He has this soft presentation. I do miss her, Peter, but the emotion is not there.
So, just before her death, how would you describe their relationship?
From outside appearances, here is a very successful pharmaceutical salesman. Lee is the mother of 3 beautiful children, 2 girls and a boy. They live in a lovely suburban neighborhood. But according to 2 of Lee's friends, she was talking about divorcing Jerry. Look, after her death, investigators found legal separation papers in their bedroom, right? Friends say that the marriage was near a breaking point. Lee was miserable. She feared him. Lee's friends, she had a couple who testified in the course of these trials, said that he was an absolute control freak with her, that he dominated her in this relationship. Every day she had to lay out his socks he was going to wear that day on the bed in a certain way. If she didn't, he got very angry with her. These friends say, according to Lee, he was becoming physically abusive, that he had struck her a number of times. They would see her wearing sunglasses and ask her to take them off, and they'd see a black eye or bruising and ask about it. And he'd say, well, I didn't do what he wanted last night. So there's a belief that there was escalating violence toward Lee prior to this terrible, terrible murder.
And Jerry, there are people who are so skeptical of you, they don't think what you just said is genuine. Mm-hmm. What do you say to those people?
It's hard to answer somebody like that because they've come to that belief for reasons that I can't understand or explain myself. To the best of my knowledge, everyone who actually knows me, Jerry Jones, as a person, knows that I'm absolutely incapable of murdering anyone, and certainly not Lee.
This is what Jerry Jones says happened on the night of December 3rd, 1988. He and his wife Lee were home with their 4-year-old son Thomas watching television. Their oldest daughter Kim had moved out, and their middle child Beth was at a party. Jerry says Lee put Thomas to sleep in his basement bedroom and then went upstairs to a hallway bathroom to take a bath. Jerry says he then went across the hall to their primary bathroom to take a shower. He says the water was running when he heard Lee scream.
I heard this horrible scream, and I'd never heard anything like that before in my entire life. I was petrified just from the scream.
One loud, piercing scream.
One loud, piercing scream. That's what I heard, and I froze for a second or 2 or 3. And
the floor plan of the house, where your shower was running, mm-hmm. and where her bath was running, there's a common wall there.
Yes.
She was in the fight of her life.
Yes.
She's a strong woman. Just the volume of that battle, mm-hmm. the thumping around that was going on in there. Didn't you hear any of that?
Peter, I did not. No. Had I heard it, I certainly would have run to her aid sooner than that.
And you understand how, for some people, that's hard to believe.
Well, you know, I don't know if it's I'm going to say this. It might be possible to do a reenactment.
You and your producer, Anthony Batson, actually did do an experiment in that house. Tell us about that.
I was in one bathroom and Anthony Batson was in the other, right? We could talk to each other as I'm talking to you right now and hear every word. I took out like a dime and I dropped it on the bathtub. We could hear it as if we're both in the same room. It is impossible for this battle to have gone on. Impossible. And not hear it. I'm telling you, the amount of noise that you could hear through that common wall, it's almost like as we are speaking right now. And his story is just ridiculous.
But Jones kept insisting to you that he only heard one scream.
Just the one.
And then ran toward the bathroom, and on the way, he bumped into a man with a knife.
This is happening so quickly, so fast. You start perceiving that something is coming out. And as I'm moving closer to the doorway, you can see more and more. And it's a knife. That my vision, my focus, my attention was just riveted. It's a knife. And I'm continuing forward, and this person, it's just a figure, is moving. And we just more or less meet in the doorway and collide right there in the doorway to the bathroom. I'm not thinking that I need to deflect that knife. That never entered my mind. It's just the fact that it happened was just a reflex action. You see a knife, and my hand went in the direction of that knife and dislodged it from his hand. And in the process, I suffered some cuts.
Let's talk about those cuts on Jerry's hand. He says he was defending himself, but the prosecutor has a different story, right?
Absolutely. The prosecution and their forensic experts says the wounds that Jerry has are consistent with cuts while you're stabbing or cutting someone with a knife. You've gotten that knife bloody from your victim. And blood is a very slippery substance. And this is something that has occurred in a number of cases that I have covered where someone has used a knife, particularly in murders of rage where they stab multiple times, is that the hand will slide down the handle onto the blade. And so if you're holding it like, try to imagine now you're holding a knife handle with the blade below your fist, and it slides down. Where you get the cut is on the inside of the upper parts of your fingers. That's where his cuts were.
Right. So he gets cut. He bumps into this guy. This is what Jones says happened next.
In the process of the collision, I was forced back, and I just bumped my head against the wall and fell to the floor. I saw stars. I'm convinced that I did not lose consciousness, but I saw stars and I was dazed, and I think I was not down for more than a second or two. And when I got up, there was nobody in the hallway any longer.
He saw stars. Was there any evidence that he had been knocked out?
No, and if he saw stars, that was only because he stepped outside and looked up into the night sky. That, again, is another ridiculous story. There's no evidence of any concussion. There was no bump on his head, no bruise, nothing whatsoever to support this. This is someone who is making a story up.
I immediately went into the bathroom. And I encountered the most horrible situation I've ever seen in my life. I could see blood on her body. And she is struggling. She's trying to push with her feet back into the corner of the bathtub. She's throwing her hands about in front of her as if fighting off an attacker. The closer I got to her, I reached the side of the tub and I reached in almost immediately, and I said, "My God, Lee, what happened?" And in the process of doing that, I was reaching in to try to lift her to me, and my feet literally just flew out from under me.
Did she speak to you?
She was trying to speak. I'm convinced of that. Her jaw would fall open as if she was trying to speak, and then it would snap shut just repeatedly like that. I can recall this chattering sound of her teeth. It's the most, under the circumstances, it's just like it's a crescendo of noise, and yet it's just the chattering of teeth.
That chattering sound he makes with his teeth made me think of Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs. Do you recall what you were thinking in that moment?
It takes a lot to shock me and freak me out. I was completely freaked out. It sent a chill down my spine, and it takes a lot to do that.
Jerry, help me out here, because this is where a lot of people, it doesn't make sense. You're a bright, articulate man. You've had military training. Why haven't you gone to that phone and dialed 911?
I don't have a good answer for you, Peter. Had I to do it over again, and had I been completely in control of my faculties, that certainly is what I would have done first and foremost.
Did you just lose it?
Yes. Yes. That's what happened. That's the truth. That's the way it happened. Had you come to my door that day, and had you said, "Jerry, there's going to be an emergency in the neighborhood tonight, and we need somebody who can do the right thing under pressure," I would have said, "Peter, I'm your man. I can do it." And when it happened in my own home, and when my wife needed me the most, I couldn't do it. I couldn't help her.
Watching this clip, I literally leaned into the monitor to see if there were any tears coming out of his eyes. There was not a single tear. He's crying. It's so dramatic. Not a single tear.
Completely manipulative, completely disingenuous, disgusting.
Jerry Jones says that instead of calling 911, he decided to take matters into his own hands and tried to wrestle his bloody wife out of the bathtub. Then things got even more complicated, he says, when their 4-year-old son Thomas woke up, climbed the stairs, and walked in on what must have been a terrifying scene.
And Thomas comes into the room. And, "Thomas, you've got to go back to bed. Your mom's hurt. I'm trying to help her. I've got to call 911. Please go back to bed." And he very dutifully turns and leaves.
What happens then?
Well, I resume my efforts to get Lee out of the tub. And again, every time I reach in and grasp her, she slips out of my hands. And after 2 or 3 additional attempts in this direction, I'm just so frustrated. I don't give up, but I hear Thomas calling for me downstairs. He's scared. He knows something has happened. He's apprehensive. I run down to him.
Jerry says he decided to put on his boots and take Thomas to a neighbor's house.
The thought that enters my mind and controls what I do next is I've got to get Thomas to a safe place.
At this point, is Lee still alive?
At this point, I think she is completely non-animated, probably alive, but her last breath is in her at this point in time. This is several minutes later, 3-5 minutes. And life is, when I first encountered her, she's still struggling. And this quickly, within 3 to 5 minutes, She's at the point where if she's breathing at all, it's very shallow, very sporadic. Not much life left.
That just takes my breath away every time I hear it. He is calmly sitting there telling you that with precious minutes ticking by, he has decided to leave his dying wife and take his son next door. Why didn't he just call the neighbor and ask him to come get Thomas and then call 911?
You know, the thought is that would have made covering up this murder much harder. If the neighbor had come over to get Thomas,
right,
he might have insisted on entering the house. He might have, and calling 911 from there. Maybe he would have spoken to Lee. Maybe she would have cried out if she realized another man was in the house.
Right.
And maybe he would have attempted to try to help save her. It would just mess up what he had set in motion and likely lead to his arrest.
Right. This next clip really stood out to me. You pushed him hard, and he just smiled, and once again calmly said some of the most shocking things I have ever heard.
You know, there are some who believe you took your son over to your neighbor so you could go back and finish off Lee.
Well, that has never been expressed in those exact words. I would say this, that while in the Air Force, I was never really trained to kill anybody. I have had some training in self-defense techniques, and there was a brief period when I went to a school in Florida prior to going to Vietnam where they taught us some rudimentary techniques for attacking another person.
Some basic training.
With a knife, some basic training. If I were going to kill Lee or you or anyone else, and I had an opportunity to pick my time and my place, I would just cut your throat. I know that there is a jugular vein there. I know approximately where it's located, and that would be very silent. There wouldn't be a scream. If you did get that jugular vein, the fight would be out of the individual within seconds. And
the allegation is this was a crime of passion, of hatred, and that if you did it, that these blows were done in such anger to punish, to inflict a cruel death.
Mm-hmm. But there was no anger, and there's none of that.
At best, your behavior at this point has been bizarre. Do you agree with that?
I would agree with that. Yes.
And your explanation for this bizarre behavior is what?
I was in shock. I was scared. I'd never encountered anything like that before in my entire life. I wish I had done the right thing. I wish I'd done the things that would have been in Lee's best interest. I look back, had I called immediately, it could have made a difference. Others, though, medical experts who have examined the autopsy report have told me that it probably wouldn't have made a difference.
Those of us who've been through military-style first aid training, and I've done that twice now, pack, wrap, elevate. You pack these wounds quickly in that room with toilet paper, if there's Kleenex in there. You put them inside all the wounds. It stops the bleeding. You use your clothing, you use towels to wrap. If he was, and she had none of that on her, when the authorities arrived, she didn't have evidence that he was trying to stop the bleeding anywhere.
Oh, that's so interesting.
And that's the part of his story that just drives me crazy, is that there should have been evidence of him doing everything he could to stop this bleeding, and there was none. And the truth is that through their investigation, the authorities believe that he took at least 6 minutes from the time he discovered, put quotes around that, her body, before he called 911. 6 minutes passed.
I did not realize that. That is truly stunning. And speaking of stunning evidence, let's get to that 911 call.
911, what do you have? Hurry, my wife and I.
Let me give you a dispatch, sir.
Hurry, please, hurry.
A dispatch.
Yes, my wife.
What's the address?
6015, 169th place southeast. Hurry, please.
Okay, what, 6015 169th place?
Hey, say again?
No, you repeat it to me, sir.
6015 169th. Hurry.
He's given this operator in the course of this 2 different addresses. They can't find the house. I've never heard of this. You know, I've covered, Judy, you too, we've covered dozens and dozens of murder cases. How many 911 calls I've heard. I've never heard of somebody not knowing where they live and making this kind of mistake. That just feels like a manipulation.
The dispatchers were confused because they couldn't find Jerry in the phone book. The ambulance was having trouble finding his house, and he kept walking away from the phone. And in that time, the dispatchers realized that he had given them the wrong address.
Ma'am,
all right, sir, you're going to have
down the road.
You're going to have to help me because we have a conflict with your address. Please give me your address again. What is your address?
Let me go look. All right, then.
He's going to go look.
This is the most uncooperative trauma victim I've ever had.
The most uncooperative trauma victim I've ever had. Jerry walked away from the phone a 4th time for about 20 seconds and then returned with a new address. Okay, Peter, all I can say is, what the fudge?
I don't buy it.
The prosecutor said he believed that Jerry was stalling to make sure that Lee was dead. Let's listen to you ask him about that.
The prosecution alleges that this was part of your diabolical plot, that you were letting Lee bleed to death. You didn't want the aid car to get there right away.
And if that were the case, I would have just waited and waited. And I might still be waiting. I may never have called 911, and I would have made up a story. Well, I didn't think about calling 911, or I don't know what I would have done. I'm not good at making up these stories, unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever the case might be.
You know, he's right about one thing. He is not good at making up stories.
He could have transported her body somewhere, but the fact that Thomas walked in on the scene screwed up, if that was his plan, screwed everything up. He then had to call 911 or eliminate his own son, and he'd made a decision, obviously, not to do that. And so this, to me, is a meticulous plan by someone who has this controlling personality that goes awry, and then he tried to compensate with delaying tactics and everything else. But Thomas walking in on that scene, I believe, just messed everything up.
So a little over 14 minutes have elapsed from the time Jerry dialed 911 to the moment help arrived. Lee was pronounced dead on the scene with no CPR even attempted, and Jerry was arrested that very night. In 1989, Jerry Jones faced a jury of his peers. They found him guilty of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to 25 years in prison. In 1998, just over 10 years after Lee was murdered, a judge set aside Jerry's conviction, ruling that in the first trial, Jerry's lawyer should have been able to present evidence about a possible alternate suspect, a 15-year-old boy who lived in the neighborhood named Daniel Busby.
Who is Daniel Busby?
My knowledge of him on a first-hand basis is of a obnoxious teenage boy who lived in our neighborhood. I think I first heard his name mentioned probably in the spring of 1988 As the year progressed, I heard the name mentioned more and more frequently, usually in a negative connotation. Lee particularly didn't like him, and saying that of Lee is saying a lot, because I don't think I would have to really, really search my memory to give you the name of anyone else that Lee did not like.
So, a 15-year-old snuck into his house and sliced up his wife. What evidence is there of that?
There's no evidence whatsoever of that. There's no evidence of an intruder. There's no fingerprints in that bathroom. There is no DNA. There are no eyewitnesses. It's simply, he would have had to have levitated into that house and committed this murder. And think about this. A 15-year-old comes in to do this murder, but he would have been aware of Jerry in the other in the other, because of that common wall that you can hear anything, that Jerry was in the house in the other room, and he's committing this vicious, horrible physical battle. It's just simply ridiculous. And this poor kid, Busby, endured these accusations over the years. He gets reported over and over in the papers, just destroyed his life, no evidence whatsoever. And I find that story preposterous.
Yes, preposterous is a good word. Busby also had an alibi. His mother said he was at home with her that night. So what evidence was there to justify a second trial?
Well, there are letters, first off. It seems that Busby was obsessed with Jerry and Lee's youngest daughter, Beth. And it seems he may have also been obsessed with Lee. And he would be a bit of a pest around the house. He liked to drop by. And I know that Lee had expressed to a friend that he kind of creeped her out a bit, the way he would stare at her in sort of a longing way.
And then there's this crazy story about the fact that the 4-year-old Thomas, who was in bed downstairs from where the murder was, that he heard somebody growl, and that woke him up. And apparently the only person who ever growled at 4-year-old Thomas was this Busby character. So it's the letters, the obsession with Lee and Beth, and this one growl that Thomas heard. That's the evidence that he has. So, as we know, Jerry was found guilty a second time. His conviction was reinstated, and his sentence remained the same. So they didn't re-sentence him. And just when you thought this case was over, you get a call that a judge decided Jerry still hadn't gotten a fair trial, so he was getting a third. And he was once again released and wanted to talk to you.
And this third trial, what are you going to be able to bring in to this courtroom that you haven't been able to do in the past?
Well, we'll be allowed to bring in the fact that Danny Busby has a 16-year history of violence against women, both psychological and physical attacks on every woman he's ever had a relationship with. I think we're going to be allowed to paint him as the monster that he is. And I believe the evidence will convince the jury that he indeed is the person responsible for Lee's death.
Why is Danny Busby's conduct after Lee's murder relevant to the murder itself?
Because it's a pattern of behavior.
So Jerry, acting as his own attorney, actually called Daniel Busby to the witness stand and questioned him about all that same stuff that they went over in the second trial, the letters to Lee, the growl, whatever, but also about his record with women, what he did to women as an adult.
Well, Busby was not a cooperating witness. He was annoyed. This is the man who had ruined his life in many ways by getting his name into the public for a crime that authorities believed he did not commit or have anything to do with it.
The police and the prosecutor says there's no evidence against Danny Busby. The jury set aside Danny Busby in their deliberations immediately, saying there's no evidence he did the crime. If he didn't do it and you didn't do it, who had the motive, the reason to murder Lee?
Well, it's no third mysterious person. Either I did it or Danny Busby did it. Obviously, 36 jurors have come to the conclusion, for reasons I can't explain, that I did it. But I can look you or anyone else in the eye and tell you I did not murder my wife. And all I can ask you or these jurors, they saw the evidence in the courtroom, but I don't know, look at it in a little more depth. What on earth is required to prove reasonable doubt?
You know what's interesting? The judge even scolded him after he was convicted and sentenced for dragging Daniel Busby repeatedly through the mud for nearly 17 years. And the jury felt he owed Daniel Busby an apology.
Do you owe Danny Busby an apology?
No. Danny Busby cannot look me in the eye and ask me for an apology. He knows what he did. He knows who he is. He knows that he murdered Lee Jones. Following the second trial, he became emboldened, and he has told several people, I did it, and I'll do it again. He has told several people, you know they have the wrong guy in prison because I did it. He thinks, and I believe he knows in his mind, that he has gotten away with murder and that he can say whatever he wants to say, and he has told people that he murdered my wife.
Okay, so for the record, that is absolutely untrue. Daniel Busby testified under oath that he never told anyone that he killed Lee, and no one has ever testified that he did tell them he killed Lee.
When you listen to him, he has a gentle sound. When you look at him when you're talking to him, he has a gentle face. But behind that, to me, it's a mask. Behind that is a cold-hearted killer, and one who deserved this verdict of guilt. I think justice was served. It took 3 bites of the apple to have it happen, but he is a man who murdered his wife. I have no doubt of that.
No doubt. So I love that you asked Jerry at the end of the interview if he was going to try for a 4th trial, and his answer just made me laugh out loud.
I'm not interested in a 4th trial. I'll do the balance of the 3 years I have on my sentence. When I'm released, I will move to Southeast Asia. I will work with orphans. I will do what I can to keep young ladies out of the sex trade, and I will work with those who are disabled as a result of the Vietnam War.
Oh my God, I can't take it. I will work with orphans, keep ladies out of sex trade, save the whales, feed the hungry. Holy cow.
Yeah, and he lives off of a country road near Arlington, Washington today. In a small house. He never went to Southeast Asia. He never helped ladies out of the sex trade. He didn't do any of those things.
Well, Peter, this case is so fascinating from start to finish, and your interviews are just a masterclass in how to question a killer. I am so grateful that you took the time to join us on this podcast.
Well, this was your idea, this wonderful podcast, and I think it's fascinating to try to get into the minds of these killers. Just a very frightening place to be.
On the next episode of Killer Conversation, Erin Moriarty will join me to discuss Brian Stewart, also known as Rick Valentini, my first killer. He's a guy who changed his name illegally, lied about who he was, and murdered his 32-year-old girlfriend, Jamie Laity.
You're not really Brian Stewart at all, are you?
To me, I am.
But not legally, are you?
Well, legally, I'm not anything. That's the problem.
You're Rick Valentini.
48 Hours Killer Conversation is hosted and produced by me, Judy Rybak. Our story editor is Maura Walls. Alan Pang oversees recording, mixing, and sound design, fact-checking, and additional production support from Rebecca LaFlamme, and special thanks to 48 Hours executive producer Judy Tygard and Paramount Podcast Vice President Megan Marcus. Follow and listen to Killer Conversation on the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. If you liked this episode, please rate and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Tune in next Tuesday for an all-new episode of Killer Conversation. Follow Killer Conversation on the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts.